Welcome back guys, hope you're all doing great, and it's Vitri here. So in the previous video we discussed about the most important hooks like the use reducer, lazy loading concepts and so on. So if you haven't watched it, click on the top right side corner, so go ahead and watch that video completely. And in this video we are going to talk about the custom hooks. Well, in React, custom hooks are where you stop copying the code and start writing the clean and reusable logic. Today, we won't talk about all the possible hooks which we can design, but we focus only on the most important custom hooks that every React developer should know, and where to use it and how to use it in the real projects and everything. For each hook, I'll explain what it is, why we need it, and when to use it. So without wasting your time, let's jump into the video. So the very first hook which we are going to talk about is the use toggle hook. That's the hook that we are going to talk about. So basically, use toggle hook is the custom hook which helps us to manage the boolean state of more or less like true or false, right? So we use this boolean state quite a lot, like for opening and closing a toggle, and like the model buttons, and displaying the data on a conditional based rendering. We use this kind of stuff a lot, right? So why we need it? Basically, boolean logic is repeated everywhere, right? Without that, we never seen the stuff in a single UI, right? So boolean logic is repeated everywhere. So that's the place. The set open, we used to say true, set open is to be false. So saying that, creating a custom state for each and every component and using the same boolean logics again and again, that becomes noisy and messy. So this hooks makes the intent clear. So we can reuse the same logics again and again for different purposes and everything. So why should you use it, right? So we know that we know the reason why we need to use it, right? But when and where to use it? We use it on models like the dialog, pop-up dialogues and everything, drop-down buttons, actions, and show and hide UI purposes. These are the places where we use this a lot. So let's talk about some real case scenarios, examples, so you can understand the real purposes and everything, right? So use toggle may look simple, but it's used a lot in a real production apps, right? So let's see some real case scenarios, like how we can use it. And yeah, okay, so let me talk about the show and hide UI part. So let's talk about that. So for that, I need the Tailwind CSS. So let's install the Tailwind CSS in our application. So let's say Tailwind CSS with white. So don't worry if you never use the Tailwind CSS. We will drop a separate video on how to work with the Tailwind CSS with the white and everything. But in this case, I'm just going through a real fast installation without explaining it. So don't worry about it. So let's just install this stuff. I'm going to copy this, and let's say npm add and install it, right? Then I need to add this stuff in our Tailwind white config.js, where it is. Here it is. Need to add that right away over there. Then I need to add this plugin straightly over here. That's it. Then we just need to import this guy. Where it is. Let me collapse everything. Our index.css. In the index.css, I'm gonna paste this, and I just have to make sure that index.css it's been imported. Please make sure that it is being imported in our home screen. So don't worry about the rest of the stuff. If you haven't watched all those videos, please click our channel and you can watch all the videos of this series completely. Okay, so now I just have to make sure everything is working fine. So let's say width needs to be screen, height needs to be screen, and flex, everything needs to be in the center. Item center and justify center. So let me enable the word wrap so you can see everything in a single page. And let me run the application npm run dev, and let me refresh this. Still, yep. Now we know that it is in the center, the content is in the center, which means the Tailwind CSS is working. So basically what we're trying to do, we have to create like a reusable code for the use toggle, right? That's what we have to design. So first what I'm going to do is I'm gonna get into the source folder. Inside the hooks we have, I'm gonna create myself the use toggle.js. Okay, so here I'm just going to say export const use toggle, which equals to an arrow function. So basically this function is going to take the initial value, which is the false. That's the default value. Okay, then I'm just going to create a state over here. Sorry for that. All right, so now we need to create a state, right? So here I'm gonna create myself a value, then I'm just going to say set value, which is going to be a state, use state, and by default it is going to carry on the initial value, right? Save it. Then right after that what I'm going to do is I'm going to create myself a toggle function, const toggle, which is equals to an arrow function. Then we can simply say set value, which is going to collect the value. We will collect the value val, which is needs to be exactly opposite of that value. If it is true, set it as false. If it is false, set it as true. Then at the end this function is going to return an array which is going to be your value first, then it's going to be that function, the toggle function. Save it. This is our custom hook now. Right now let's get back into our app.jsx. So here we are going to create that the show and hide UI first. For that what I'm going to do is, so let me create a division class name, and here I'm just going to say width, of course it's going to be 20, and height, of course it's going to be 20. Rounded, everything needs to be medium, shadow needs to be medium, and the bg color needs to be teal 500, something like this, which is going to be a perfect square like that. So this needs to be everything in the flex column direction. Then here I'm gonna have myself a button, which is a type of button itself. Then here I'm just going to say show and hide. This is the button, right? So let me show you show for the time being right now. Show, then let's say gap, which is going to be 12 or something. For this button I'm just going to say class name, padding px it's going to be 4, and py it's going to be 2, rounded medium, pg gray 100, on hover bg gray 200 or something. Okay, that's how it looks, right? Cursor pointer. So then now what I need to do is, so we're going to use that toggle over here. So let's get that const is equals to use toggle. That's the custom hook which we have. Initial, we need to supply the initial value. If you don't supply it, by default it is going to use the false value itself, right? So here I'm just going to collect show, and then set show, something like this. Okay, now we have that variable. So here what I'm going to do is, if the show value is true, then I just need to say hide. If it is not, then I just need to say show. Okay, then here this entire stuff that needs to be, if it is show, if the show is true, if the show value is true, then only I need to display it. Okay, which means this needs to be in a conditional rendering. Okay, if show is true, then I need to display it, otherwise I'm not supposed to display it. Now whenever I click this button on click, we can simply say, we can simply supply that the set show function as a reference. We don't have to do anything else, because this function, it has this interior logic to change the value into the opposite value. So save it. Now when I click this, you can see it displays instantly, right? So that's the beauty of this particular logics. So we can use the same stuff in another way. Like what we can do is, we can create an input field, and here instead of this I can simply say, if the show is true, this needs to be a text type. If the show is like hidden, it needs to be a password type. Then the placeholder needs to be enter the value, something like this. now we have the input, right? So if I type something, currently it's displaying, but if I hide it, it will be changed into a password. So we can use the same logic in a different place. So think about it in a real case scenarios. For hiding, if you're keeping a different state, and for opening, we are having a different state. Even right now, we are using the same variable. So think about it here. I can simply say const open it. We can use the same toggle action, but I can go with password show password toggle password, something like this. So I can simply change this into show password, right? And I can create one more button for the password stuff, and I can change this into the toggle password. Here I can simply say hide password and show password. But in a real case scenario, we used to have the icons. When you click that icon, it will display it, and if you click it, it will again get back into the log, right? Something like this. That's how it looks, right? And inside here also, that needs to be show password, right? So I hope you get the point. So this is the one custom hook that we designed and which we use quite a long time, and most of the times we used it. So basically it encapsulates the boolean logics and keep our components completely clean, so we don't have the messy callback functions inside each and every actions. We just have one simple state, which is a custom state over here, and we are using that custom hook to do the rest of the stuff for us. All right, so now let's move on to the next one, which is going to be your useDebounce hook, right? So this useDebounce, which we use a quite long, very well, the most important thing, and we use it for most of the times, right? So basically, we use this useDebounce hook for delaying the for delaying purpose, like for delaying and updating value, and until the user stops typing something like that. Think about it. We use that useDebouncing on the search. So if the every time whenever user typing something in the search box, I want to refetch the API and display the data, right? But uh, typing it, fetching the data while typing itself, it could be not performance wise, it should be a lag, right? Because it is not cost efficient as well as. So I need to wait a few milliseconds until the user completely type the value, then I need to display it, right? So now let's create the useDebounce hook, and let me show you a real example how to use it. All right, so for the useDebounce, so let me give you the definition first, then we can start writing the program. That this is it. Okay, so now what we are going to do is I'm gonna clean this up, or AFC. Let's keep the app as simple as that. Okay, and oops, wait a minute. Of that, I can simply delete this stuff. Yep, that would do it. Perfect. So now we have everything will be in the center of the screen. Okay, so let's go ahead and create the useDebounce custom hook. So basically what we are trying to do is we're going to use the JSON placeholder API to fetch the complete post. Then we are going to search the post by given an input. User needs to type the input, the post title, and we are going to filter the title and we are going to display it. So we can't filter the data every time when the user press the keys. We need to wait until the 500 milliseconds, something like that. So once the user not giving any input for the certain time period, we need to refetch or refilter the data. That's what we are trying to do. Inside the use hooks, I'm going to say useDebounce, debounce.js. Perfect. Now here, what we are going to do is, so we need to do the exact same stuff what we did for our useToggle. So I'm going to export a function, export const use, not toggle, useDebounce, which equals to an arrow function. Okay. So basically this debounce is going to get the value, then it's going to make sure that it's delay for a certain time period. If the user doesn't supply any value, by default it's going to be 500 milliseconds. So here what I'm going to do, I'm going to create myself the use state, bring the use state, So which is going to be the debounced value. So let's say debounced and set debounced, and by default it is going to be the value which I am supplying from the outside, right? Then right after here, I'm going to use our use effect hook, get a callback function in it, a nameless function in it. Then we have to supply um, the array injections, which is going to be the value changes and it's going to be the delay changes. If there is any changes on the value or if there is any changes on the delay, it needs to re-render that use effect. So here I'm just going to say const timer, which equals to set timeout. Because basically we are setting a certain timeout to wait until that timeout. We are assigning the debounced value, right? So set timeout, which is going to be a nameless function in it, and then I need to supply the time, how long that timeout needs to be delayed. It needs to be delayed based on the delay value which I have in my hand. Then inside here, what I need to do, I just need to say set debounced value, then assign that debounced value, right? Basically what we are instructing to wait certain time for the delay time which I set, or the time which is set by the user. Then you have to assign that value, right? And at the end, all we have to do is to return clear that timeout. We need to clear that timeout, right? Because then only it will be perfect. So then at the end, all we have to do is to return the debounced value. Save it. Perfect. All right, so now we have our use debounce hook in our hand. So let's check this out. Let me get back into the app.jsx over here. So here I need to need a certain state. So let's bring those states over here. Use state, which is basically the states which used as for the posts. Then it's going to be set post, and by default it is going to be an empty array. Then right after here, I need to collect this state. What happened? Sorry. Here use state snippets, and here I'm just going to bring the search input value. So search by default it's going to be empty. Then of course we need something for the loading, right? So let's bring the loading, set the loading, and yep, we can simply keep the value as we can use that use toggle itself, right? So let me, instead of keeping it that, I'm just going to say toggle. Let me use that toggle state itself, right? That's the purpose we designed that hook. Now right after here, I'm going to collect the debounced value. So const debounced value, which is equals to use debounce. So basically the value which you are trying to debounce is the search value, and I don't need to supply the delay because 500 milliseconds is more than enough. So I'm going to leave that value itself. Then I'm going to bring the use effect. Inside this use effect, open it. So the array dependency injections, basically it's going to be your debounced value itself, right? That's the debounced value. If there is any changes in this debounced value, then re-render it. Open it here. So here I'm just going to call that set loading function. I don't have to supply because by default it's false, right? So I'm going to set the value into true value. Then I'm going to bring the try and catch over here. So if there is any error is happening, I'm just going to do the console.log, whatever the error has been coming, that error will be. And finally, in finally block, I'm just going to simply trigger the set loading function one more time. That's it. Okay. So whether there is any error or not, it doesn't matter. It needs to start the loading, then it needs to close the loading. So here I need to bring that API. So let's bring the JSON placeholder API from jsonplaceholder.tinydcode.com. And this is the API we're going to use in order to fetch the post. Okay. And right inside the try block, what I'm going to do is I'm going to get the response. Const response is equals to await response.json. Await, sorry, no. Fetch. I need to fetch it first. So since we can't directly use this, so what I need to do is inside this try block, this try and catch, this stuff that needs to be entirely inside a function. Const fetch data. Fetch data is equals to an arrow function, and that arrow function needs to be an asynchronous function. Then only we need to bring the try and catch stuff in it. And here I need to get that. Okay. And inside this try block only, I need to do right const response is equals to await fetch. I need to fetch the data, and that is going to be this API. Copy that and paste it. We need to fetch the post. So make sure that's spelled properly. Post. Then right after here, I'm just going to collect the data. So const data is equals to await response.json data. Then I need to assign this data filtered by filtering it. Then I need to put it inside the our local state, because I don't want to display everything. So user needs to type something, then we are fetching, displaying it, right? That's what we are planning to do over here. So let's filter the posts over here. So const filtered is equals to, from the data dot filter, I'm going to use the filter method. That's an array. So data dot filter, then user, sorry, data dot filter, we're going to collect the post, open it. So here I'm going to get the post dot, what are the data we are receiving? Title. So I'm going to collect the title. So post dot title. So post dot title, that needs to be converted into lower case. Convert it into a lowercase completely. Then I need to make sure that includes dot includes the debounced value, that needs to be converted into lowercase as well as. Okay. So this is what that we are filtering over here. Basically, we are extracting the every post. Then we are converting this title into a lowercase. Then we are making sure whatever the user typed, it needs to be in that title. Then it will be filtered. Okay. Then I need to set post, which is going to be your filtered itself. So this is the data that we are trying to do. Then right after here, I need to call that. So fetch data. Otherwise, this function will never work. Okay. Now here, what we are going to do, we are going to create a h2 tag, which is going to be, let's say, post search, which is debounced. Okay. And let me get into the page, and I should be able to see post search, which is debound, and I'm going to bring the input tag, which is going to be the type of text input, which is going to be text itself. Okay. Then for this, I'm gonna simply say placeholder, which is going to be enter the title that you want to search. Okay. Now we have that. So for this, I can simply say class name, padding, which is going to be 4, and border, I need the border on every corner, and border needs to be gray 200. Then rounded needs to be medium. That's how it looks. Okay. And this needs to be collected. This value needs to be collected over here, right? So for this input, I'm going to simply say on change. Whenever there is a changes, it's been happening, it's going to trigger that event, collect the event. Then I'm just going to say search that event e dot target dot value, something like that. Okay. Now we have the search values. Then every time whenever the search value is being changed, the search value changed, debounce value gets changed. If the debounce value gets changed, the data will get fetched and it will be stored in the post value. So here I'm just going to render it. If I do have the post, then the post dot length, if the length is greater than 0, then only I'm gonna do this action, post. Then I'm gonna say post dot map, open it, post dot map, access every post out of it. Then I'm gonna simply display a paragraph tag with that post dot title. Here the key, which is going to be post dot id. Okay, save it. Now over here, so if I click the post, anyways, it's not going to get that value. So if I'm simply searching for AB, something like that, you can see it's fetching the data, and every time whenever I type something, it's going to wait for 500 milliseconds, then it's going to return that data. Okay, so still we are getting the data. We have to clear it because I can't see that input field. So what I'm going to do is, if I don't have the debounced value, if the debounced value is empty, I need to clear it. So I'm just going to say set post as an empty value. Okay, then I just need to return. I don't want to fetch it. Let's refresh it. Now it will be gone. So if I'm typing something like ABC, see, it's going to wait for certain times. If the data is not there, then it's going to display that empty value, because currently for that we don't have any value. So now we have some value in it, right? If I increase the delay effects over here for 1000, like 1 second, see here, AB, it's going to wait 1 second, then it's going to fetch the record, right? So that's the beauty of this debounce effect. Okay, I hope you understand, and I hope you the real case scenario over here, since it is in German, I don't know what language currently it is being using, but if it is working, so this is how the real the debounce hook will work in real case scenarios, and that's the beauty of this particular stuff. And this is the real case work we use a lot during only the searching purposes. Okay, cool. All right then, so let's finish this session with one last usable custom hook, which is going to be the fetching data. We know that we need to fetch the data from the API. So every time I can't do the same stuff, convert it to JSON, then assign it to that. We can't do that. So I need to automate this one. So for that purpose only, we're going to use this useFetch. We're going to create ourselves the useFetch hook. So basically this useFetch is a custom hook that handles the data fetching logic in a safely way by using, we're going to use the abort controller and the use effect in it, and we're going to clean up it properly. Then we're going to make the async side effects, we're going to handle those things, and we're going to make it the reusable logics in it. Okay, so it's the very realistic and common hook that we use a lot in our web applications. So let's build that one now. Let me close this and let me get back over here. We're going to use the same example itself. Then here I'm going to say use fetch.js. Open it here. So I'm going to export const use fetch. Open it. An arrow function. So for this useFetch, all we have to supply the URL, the API URL into it. Then we need to have a use state to store the data which we fetched data, and initially the data is going to be the null value. Okay, then inside over here I'm going to bring the use effect hook. Open it. You don't have to keep it in a separate input. Let's keep it in the same input itself. Use effect. Open it and bring the array dependency injections. Whenever there is the URL changes, this needs to be re-rendered. Then inside over here, what we need to do, if I don't have the URL, then return. Simple, right? Then I'm just going to create the controller, the abort controller. So controller is equals to new abort controller. Let's generate the new abort controller. Then I'm going to fetch the data, right? So we need to fetch it. So let's say fetch, bring the URL in it, bring the URL. Then I'm going to assign the signal, which is going to be the controller.signal itself. Okay. Then right after here, I'm just going to use the .then function. Open it. Then here we have to collect the response out of it. Then we just need to return the response.json out of it. And let me enable the word wrap so we can see it completely. Then right after this then function, once I have the JSON data, I need to collect that data. Okay, so I'm just going to say set data with that data itself. Simply supply that the reference, it's going to set the value. Don't worry about it. Then I'm going to catch the value. If there is any error has been happening, I'm going to simply check that error, right? What that error, if the error dot name, if it is not equals to abort error, because it's going to throw that. Even if you're trying to abort it, it's going to throw an error. So we need to make sure that it's not an abort error. Then only we need to log that error, or else we have to return that error as well as. But in this case, I'm just going to console.log it. Okay, if anything which is coming apart from this abort error, we need to log it. Otherwise, if it is abort error, leave it, because that's why we implement the abort controller. So that's not necessary. Then right after here, I'm gonna return controller.end. We need to end, sorry, not end, it needs to be abort. By the end, it needs to be abort, and at the end I just need to return the data. That's it. This is all about the useFetch. Now let's see how does this is going to make an impact. So here all I need is the data, right? So I'm going to get this URL, then I'm going to comment this, and here I'm just going to say const data, which is equals to useFetch, then supply the URL in it, save it. Then let's refresh this. Now if I simply type something, it's going to wait. Maybe we are getting any error. Console, it's saying invalid hook call. Invalid hook. Hooks can be called only inside a body of a function component. Yep, we used it. Okay, so I used it inside here, so that's the issue. So it better to be cut it out from here, then I can put it over here. That should resolve an issue, I think so. Yep, it's working. See, it's fetching the data and it's working. Clear, right? So what we have to do is basically this needs to be inside your function component, not inside your useFetch. So that's the reason it's not working. So then I just put it outside. Now it's working. So if I simply search something like, let me supply the AB text, see, it's getting the debounce value, then it's filtering the data over here, right? So that's the so see how simple it is. Just we have to supply the URL, then we have the data in our hand. If the API everything is working fine, we're gonna have our data in our hand, right? So that's the beauty of having these three important custom hooks, because all these three actions we use quite a lot in our web app development. Okay, so maybe in the next video we can talk about the more interesting custom hooks and everything. And if you want any other custom hooks, if you have in your mind, please drop that in the comment section, and I'm happy to prepare a content for that. And if you have any questions based on these concepts what we discussed so far, please point out the timeline and drop the questions in the comment section, and I'm happy to help you out. And if I make any mistakes while explaining, and if I explain anything in a wrong way, please point out that as well, as I will correct myself, and then I'll prepare a better video for you guys. So if you haven't subscribed to our channel, please subscribe it, and that helps us, and that motivate us to prepare a more important content for you all people. All right, so I'll see you in the next video.